And yeah, my name's Jane. I'm a compulsive debtor and business person. So I am a member of the Sunday morning Business Debtors Anonymous meeting, which is part of DA that meets on Zoom at the moment, but it's from Elizabeth Bay in Sydney. I started coming to DA about 9 years ago, and I come from other 12-step programs and have experienced some good recovery in there, but it just was not, it was not cutting the mustard when it came to my financial unmanageability. And I was sort of sitting on the fence coming to DA, and I realised I had to either work it or stop going, and I was given the gift of desperation. I was really paralysed with my debt, and I just thought, my way hasn't worked. I need to do what's suggested. And I got a sponsor and started working the steps, and continue to do both those things and have a home group, and absolutely I'm super committed to Debtors Anonymous. And yeah, I was paralysed with debt, and I'm pleased to say I haven't actually debted. I haven't incurred any new debt since the 1st of March 2014. And I have paid all my debt off. Thank you. And, the peace that I feel today, to be able to say that, to be able to have that as my reality, is just beyond words, really, because the anxiety of my debt and my behaviour, my unmanageability, was just through the roof. And so, I have had to really take the cotton wool out of my ears and do what's suggested with every step. And, reading through step 9 and really reflecting on step 9, it sort of reminds me of how much in my situation, and I definitely hear it in other people when I sponsor people in this program, we start in DA, I started in DA, and I just felt so full of shame and remorse at my behaviour. And I just wanted to throw all my money at my debt, apologise to everybody, sort of just really rush at it. And thank God the steps are in the order that they're in. And, reflecting on step 9, like, it is huge, to go and make amends to people, places and things is a massive action. It's a step of action. And I really see how I needed to have done the other steps first to be ready to do that. And, by doing the steps in the order in which they are, it gives me a foundation. It gives me a strength to then step off and actually be able to engage in the outside world and start to tidy up the wreckage of my past. As it says in the step chapter, once we communicated honestly with our creditors and stopped making promises we couldn't keep, we were actively making amends. And that was my experience. I started paying off my debt well before I got to actually step 9. So there's already that flow of changing my behaviour and thinking more of other people from earlier on in the program. So by the time I got to do step 9, I already had felt so much better about myself, so I was able to go to make these formal amends with much more of a sense of self-acceptance and dignity. And I think it's that dignity that is restored through walking in the doors of DA. I just immediately felt better about myself because I was coming out of denial and actually facing my reality, facing my debt and my behaviour. And I just have gradually felt better and better about myself at rejoining the human race. And, I had a lot of magical thinking, and the magical thinking and grandiosity would tell me that, oh, I'm going to get this windfall and God's going to, sort of shower me with riches. So therefore I can debt, whether it's credit card, whether it's family members, because I just know this magical thinking, crazy, insane thinking, that it'll all be okay. And it just wasn't. And so, you know, that magical thinking directly harmed other people, you know, especially the family members, you know, that I was debting from. And it's a great reminder to me, and it keeps me, you know, really kind of bloody right sized to remember that, you know, my thinking can harm others. And, you know, I had a lot of credit card debt, but I also borrowed money quite a bit from my father and my cousin, but mainly my father. And I would get him to bail me out. And I always kept records of how much I'd borrowed so that I could justify to myself, oh, but I know how much, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, steal here. I'm going to pay you back. But I mean, it was all just words, you know, I'm going to pay you back one day, someday. And he would bail me out. And he had finite resources, like he was retired and and he didn't want to be doing that. It wasn't like he was, you know, wealthy and throwing money at me, not at all, you know. So um, I I realized as I started working through my steps in DA and really getting clarity around my debt that he was the person that he was the debt that I wanted to prioritize over the banks. You know, I came to a understanding with the banks. I had 6 different credit cards, all maxed out, you know the score. I came to an understanding with the banks. I had a payment plan, all of that stuff. Thank God my sponsor was there saying, don't throw all your money at your debt, like do it very, very slowly, be willing to do it slowly so that I could build up savings. But, you know, I did pay off my father and I stopped delaying that debt repayment, which I'd always done in the past, and I prioritized it. And, you know, I eventually paid off everything to my father. And I had the joy of being able to contact him and said, Dad, I don't owe you any more money. And I also made a formal amends to him. And I remember when I was getting ready to say what I wanted to say to him, I did have some fear, you know, and it talks a lot about the fears in the literature around making amends. But I also had enough of a sense that I was ready to do that, you know, and I think that's important that we make amends. For me, that I made amends when I felt ready to do so, but I can't wait around for there to be no fear. You know, it's like, you know, thank you. So, you know, I was able to say to my father, you know, I'm sorry for my behavior in the past. And it wasn't this huge, long, drawn out conversation. And he was very gracious that it meant a lot to him that I said it. 2 months later, he died. You know, he dropped dead unexpectedly of a stroke, just bang like that. Can you imagine what peace and gratitude I have to think that I had made amends to him formally and financially? 2 months later, he died. So I urge you to don't dilly-dally with making amends. You know, do the step work because it's so powerful and it's so meaningful, you know, to just seize the day and do the step work. You know, don't put it off. But the other thing, I suppose, the importance for me of doing it with the guidance of my sponsor and my higher power. And, you know, I left to my own devices, you know, I don't know the best way. You know, I need God and I need my you know, PRGs, my fellowship. And, you know, when I sponsor people through this step, I'm very conscious of not telling them what to do. You know, I say, reflect on it, pray on it. What do you think is the most appropriate amends here? You know, and we discuss it, you know, because I think we're often so hard on ourselves. We're constantly almost, you know, groveling in, you know, and it's good to just have that right-sized, you know, self-acceptance when we do make amends. And yeah, what else did I want to say? Yeah, I suppose just the importance of taking action, the importance of being held accountable with a sponsor, completing all your step 9. Like I find that really important for me, that I actually do approach it, you know, very methodically and make sure I do all the amends. And then the other thing, I suppose, is making an amends to myself. I notice that they don't talk about that in this chapter, the step 9 chapter in this book, but you know, my understanding of step 9 is that, you know, I also need to make amends to myself because I have harmed myself. You know, I have deprived myself for the sake of my business. I have really not practiced self-care. And one of the most beautiful parts of, for me, of experiencing recovery in Debtors Anonymous is knowing how to look after myself and actually prioritizing that, you know. So that's part of my living amends, is to keep working my program, stay close to DA, keep clarity with my numbers, and keep looking after myself. You know, I really neglected myself in my disease. So yeah, I will also put myself on my step 8 and on my step 9. So yeah, so I think I'll leave it there. I think my time's probably up. Is it, Sandra?
You got 9 seconds. That couldn't have been closer. That was perfect.
Well, thank you all for listening, and I'll leave it there.